The Billionaire's Fake Fiancée by Naomi Rowland. Read to you by Star Williams. Chapter 1.
You can't be serious, Greg.
Jason felt herself sway a little. Maybe she was becoming a little lightheaded from shock. She put out her hand to touch Greg's desk, hoping to steady herself, but then snatched it away. She'd be damned if she allowed herself to show any weakness, especially in front of him.
You're firing me?
Still seated on his thickly padded, comfortable office chair, Greg leaned back and steepled his fingers, a gesture she always hated, because it came across as pompous and pretentious, which was unsurprising because Gregory DeWitt was pompous and pretentious. "Come on now, Jason," he said in tones she figured were meant to be soothing, but only sounded patronizing. "I'm not firing you, exactly. You know that."
Am I still employed here at the gym? Am I still drawing a salary, benefits, paid vacation?
She struggled to keep her tone even. He looked at her as if she were acting like a tiresome child. "No, but—"
"Then you're firing me!"
Perspiration had broken out all over her body the moment he called her into his office. Now she could feel it grow cold, despite the warmth in the air that let everyone know that summer was coming to Serenity Cove.
You bastard! I ran this place with you for 3 years. As a matter of fact, you owe a lot of your success to me, to my ideas. I'm the one who managed your social media campaigns. I'm the one who got your numbers up.
"And you did a great job," he said in that same annoying, soothing voice that made her want to either grind her own teeth to powder or to reach out and claw him across the face. She refrained, because the first one would only bring costly dentist bills, and the other would land her in jail. Greg got up and hurried around the desk to face her, probably because he spotted the gleam in her eye and recognized it for the warning signal that it was. "Babe, look."
Don't babe me. I'm not your little stupid, trusting girlfriend anymore.
He looked at her, pausing and flicking his eyes upwards as if asking the heavens for patience, and then said, "That's why it's not a good idea for you to keep working here."
Did you think it was a bad idea, or did Delia think so?
She snapped. The name stuck in her throat, as it always did. Her stepsister, Delia, wasn't anywhere near the top of her list of favorite people. Ever since Jason's father had left her mom and moved in with his girlfriend, Teresa, even before the ink on the divorce papers were dry, her new sibling had pitted herself against Jason in competition over everything, from arguing that she should have the perfectly round pancakes and not the wobbly ones when they were 13, to trying to be better at cheerleading and glee club when they were 15, to brazenly sleeping with the man she thought she was in love with now that they were in their 20s. Half the time, Delia didn't want anything on its own merit. She only wanted it because Jason had it. The last thing Jason would ever allow her sister to steal from her stood before her now, in black track pants and a red polo shirt uniform emblazoned with the gym's logo, opening and closing his mouth like a gasping trout. Delia didn't, well, not exactly. She only suggested. But Jason wasn't even listening. She stared at Greg, noticing for the first time how stupid he looked with his soul patch, which had gone out of fashion 10 years ago, eyes that were too deep set and too close together, making him look perpetually sly. His overblown, beefy, bulked-up muscles that he fed on a steady diet of protein shakes and raw eggs. And she shuddered. How had she been attracted to this man? How had she convinced herself that she was in love with him?
You know what, Greg? Fine. No, great. I'm fired. Here's your stuff back.
She yanked the laminated ID card that hung from a lanyard around her neck and threw it at the desk. It bounced off and fell on the floor.
Take this too.
She grabbed onto the tail of her company polo shirt, a smaller version of the one he was wearing, and pulled it over her head in a single fluid motion, then balled it up and threw it at his head. Now she was wearing just her black sweatpants, black gym shoes, and a white racerback sports bra with the familiar swoosh logo on the front. Against skin the color of dark roast coffee, the white bra gleamed. His eyes bugged. "What are you?"
I expect to see my severance pay and all accumulated financial benefits in my account by the end of the week.
A dark, menacing gaze pinned him where he stood.
Every penny, Greg, or I'm coming over here and putting my foot up your ass.
Without waiting on a response, she spun around and walked out of his office, not even bothering to bring her hands up to cover her torso. Across the gym floor, past the spin class in session, nobody noticed. Nobody cared. A handful of other women were there, working out in clothes even briefer than hers. So, whatever. When she got to the locker rooms, she found her gym bag and donned a simple white t-shirt, pausing in the mirror only to make sure she had her game face on before walking outside. She smoothed down her thick crown of fine braids, which had been dyed a deep, lusty red. They always clashed with the red of her work polo anyway, she reminded herself with a grin. Out in the parking lot, headed for a nearby bus stop, she passed the fire engine red of Greg's stupid fancy sports car, with its shiny chrome whatsits and gleaming tires, the second love of his life. This man scrubbed down the car's tires and then glossed them up with silicone polish every weekend, getting into the grooves with a toothbrush. Who the hell did that? She averted her eyes, trying not to reconjure the memory of how she'd discovered Greg had been cheating on her with Delia by finding a pair of the woman's panties on the floor of the car. Stupid, overpriced hunk of metal. Something should happen to it. Jason pulled out her phone and hit 1 on her speed dial. Sienna answered on the 3rd ring. Sup, ho? Normally, Jason would laugh and return an equally salacious salutation, but today she wasn't in the mood. My place, she said shortly. I need you. Let's burn the gym down, Sienna proposed, throwing herself onto the love seat next to Jason. The suggestion was so ridiculous, but so much like Sienna, that Jason laughed out loud. She accepted the green mystery cocktail her best friend pressed into her hand and sipped on it, wincing at the sour taste of lemons, Midori, and whatever else Sienna had tossed in there on a whim. We're not burning the gym down. You sure? 'Cause we can Google how to make it look like an accident. Her dark brown eyes glittered with excitement. Jason didn't speak again until her drink had reached the low tide mark. As the alcohol sank in the glass, so did her mood. Sienna had a way of making everything look like it wasn't as bad as you figured. But this was terrible. Oh, girl, what am I going to do? What about the business? She waved her arm around to encompass the rows of card tables lined up in the living room, the jars and boxes piled high on top of them, just as I was getting it off the ground. The scent of perfumes and essential oils hung heavy in the air, filling their nostrils. Lavender, geranium, basil, cedarwood, sandalwood, frankincense. The entire range of citrus, from cloying neroli to bergamot to the sting of lemon. And the base oils, olive and coconut, evening primrose, black castor and hemp. The baskets of carefully and lovingly dried botanicals, petals, herbs, and tree gums, all melding together to create a unified, divine scent that gladdened Jason's soul. And now, everything had gone sideways. She didn't just need the job at the gym to live. She'd been meticulously saving until she had a large enough nest egg to invest in the launch of her line of hand-blended, natural hair care products, Naturally Beautiful. Since she had been a teen, all she'd ever wanted was to create a wonderful line of products that would set the whole Naturalista world on its end. The planned launch was just months away. Surely Greg had known this, and how much that launch had meant to her. He'd known, she reminded herself. He just didn't care. Like every good best friend in history, Sienna knew exactly what was on her mind. Did you explain to him that you needed the next few paychecks for your product launch? Come on. He could have stayed his hand a couple of months. I wouldn't have given him the satisfaction of begging. She pursed her lips, trying to contain her disappointment. It felt as if she'd lost everything. First her man, now her job. Things between her and Greg had ground to a halt 3 months ago. Starting the moment Jason had held aloft the torn shred of satin underwear from one finger and asked how the hell it had wound up in his car. When he lied like the dog he was, she reacted with a parade of emotions: shock, doubt, denial, hurt, and anger. She'd broken things off with Greg, and to her chagrin, he didn't seem the least bit concerned. Fine by me, he'd responded cruelly. I was getting tired of you anyway. I mean, you're a pretty girl, And a great cook. But Lord, you're boring in bed. She flinched, cut to the quick by his cruelty. Maybe there'd been a sliver of truth to that, she thought bitterly. She thought sex was okay, but had never been the type to fling her drawers into the air and swing from the chandeliers. But boring? Really? Word was, Greg and Delia had hit the clubs the very next weekend, grinding up a storm to the latest tracks. It was a no-brainer to assume that the other woman, younger than she was by a year and a half, kept an entire arsenal of sexual tricks under her garter belt. He wasn't worth it, you know? Sienna broke into her thoughts. She glared at her friend, weirded out by how accurate the woman's perceptions always were. What are you, part witch? Sienna played along with the witch story. She fluffed her thick head of natural black hair until it looked like an old hag's rat's nest, and then pressed her fingertips to her temples, squinting as if she was receiving a message from the great beyond. "You'll soon meet a stranger," she began, swaying like a palm tree in a gentle breeze. Jason snorted. "When? Some enchanted evening?" Sienna ignored her. "He will be tall, rich, and have a butt you could bounce quarters off of." Jason laughed, draining her glass. "Do tell, Elvira. You got any more of this green stuff, or do I have to drag you by the hair into the kitchen to make me some more?" "Duh. I made an entire jug. It's in the fridge. Have at it, honey bunny." As Jason returned with 2 fresh drinks for them both, Sienna asked, "And how are you for money?" Jason shrugged. "I've been saving at least $100 a month since my first job at 15. At first, the money was for a one-way plane ticket to Germany, but her planned migration had never transpired. Should cover me for the next 6 months or so. I won't starve." Sienna patted her shoulder, and she felt it oddly comforting. "We can do better than to plunder your savings." She withdrew her phone and began poking at it. "We're gonna get you a job."